Ethan Blake, a wealthy entrepreneur used to winning, had always believed that life was just a series of games he was destined to win. One lavish evening in the heart of Manhattan, under the glow of crystal chandeliers and amid the echo of refined laughter, a single challenge shook the confidence he wore like armor. His longtime friend, Adrian Stone, known for his clever schemes, raised a glass of red wine and smirked with mischief. "You think you can win anyone over, huh? I bet you wouldn't dare marry someone completely out of your type." Ethan arched an eyebrow, his eyes lighting up as if sparked by a new chessboard. "And if I do?" Adrian set his glass down and spoke with calm conviction. $1,000,000 if you marry her and live together for at least 6 months. No backing out. No loopholes." As someone who viewed challenges as part of his identity, Ethan nodded without hesitation. What he didn't expect was that the woman Adrian chose would turn his world upside down. Her name was Nora Bennett, a quiet elementary school teacher from suburban Brooklyn. She loved books, gardening, and had no interest in the glitz and glam of high society. No designer gowns, no glittering diamonds, just honesty, independence, and eyes that never wavered. Their first meeting was at a cozy diner in an old Brooklyn neighborhood where the warm glow of amber lights softened the space. Ethan arrived first, sitting upright, adjusting his tie like it was a business negotiation rather than a date. Nora walked in unhurried and sat across from him with a steady gaze. "You're Ethan Blake, right?" she asked without the slightest hint of nervousness. "And you must be Nora," Ethan replied, shaking her hand with his usual polish. "We both know why we're here." "I know about the deal," she said bluntly. Ethan was momentarily caught off guard, but kept his composure. "And yet you still agreed to meet me?" "I have my reasons," Nora said. "I'm not a pawn in anyone's game. If we get married, my life is still mine." That sentence, so clear, so firm, left Ethan uncharacteristically quiet. This wasn't going to be the simple game he thought it was. Over the next few days, Ethan found himself wanting to know more about Nora. Next meeting took place in her favorite used bookstore. No loud music, no champagne, just worn pages and the comforting scent of aged wood. "You don't really fit in here," Nora teased, eyeing his tailored suit among dusty bookshelves. "Maybe not," Ethan chuckled, "but I want to understand why you agreed to a marriage with an expiration date." Nora exhaled slowly, her eyes distant. "I've loved before. I've been betrayed. I don't believe in fairy tales anymore. But I do believe in clarity, and this deal is, at least, clear." Ethan didn't smile this time. For the first time, he didn't see her as a challenge, but as a woman with depth and wounds she didn't hide. They got married on a mild spring afternoon. No grand wedding, just a courthouse ceremony with 2 witnesses. No bouquet, no extravagant rings, just a simple vow to stay married for 6 months. What began as a contract soon became something more. Ethan started to change. Around Nora, he felt no need to perform, no urge to impress. She didn't flatter him, didn't fawn over him, and never once asked him to prove anything. Nora, while keeping her distance, couldn't ignore the subtle truth. Ethan wasn't who she thought he was. He listened, respected her space, and surprisingly could even make her laugh. By the 4th month, Ethan had stopped counting the days. He realized he didn't want to go separate ways when the time came. But Nora remained unchanged, committed to the terms, her emotions tightly guarded. One day, as they watered plants on the balcony, Ethan spoke softly. "What if, after 6 months, I don't want to leave?" Nora didn't look at him. She simply asked, "By then, will you still be playing a game, or will you truly want to stay?" A simple question, but for Ethan, it was the moment he understood this wasn't a bet anymore. He had gambled away the most valuable thing in any game, his heart. Right after signing the marriage certificate, Lucas took Chloe to a penthouse in the heart of Manhattan. The space was more like a gallery of wealth than a home. Floor-to-ceiling windows reflected the skyline's glow, and every piece of furniture was a curated example of modern, expensive taste. To Lucas, this wasn't just where he lived, it was his stage, and he believed everything in it, including his new wife, belonged to him. But Chloe wasn't the kind of woman impressed by lights and luxury. The moment she stepped inside, she scanned the space quietly, then turned to Lucas with a cold, unwavering gaze. 6 months. Not a day more, she said plainly, as if she'd rehearsed the line 100 times. Without waiting for his reaction, she walked over to the giant window, looking down at the traffic far below. Uninterested in the opulence around her, Lucas merely smirked. He was used to resistance. Every woman who'd entered his life had eventually fallen dazzled by his wealth or disarmed by his charm. At least, that's what he always believed. In the days that followed, Lucas pulled out every trick he knew. Extravagant gifts, fine dining at Michelin-starred restaurants, custom outfits from Milan and Paris, even a private yacht for the weekend. But Chloe's heart remained frozen. She accepted everything out of obligation, never once smiling from the soul. "Are you trying to buy me?" she asked one evening, her eyes sharp. "That's just sad." Her defiance both infuriated and intrigued him. For Lucas, control was instinct, what kept his world in order. Chloe's refusal to be swayed by material things wasn't just resistance. It was a threat to the very foundation of who he thought he was. Lucas began changing tactics. If she wasn't swayed by luxury, then he'd use limitation and isolation. He suggested Chloe quit her job, saying, "You don't need to work now that you're my wife." When she refused, he began interfering, canceling appointments at the last minute, sabotaging her schedule. Whenever she stepped outside, reporters shadowed her every move. Close friends slowly drifted away, all by design, but Chloe held firm. Every time he pushed, she rose stronger. Instead of fighting back with anger, she chose silence, meeting him with unwavering resolve. Her words, when spoken, were razor-sharp but never cruel. To Lucas, this was a silent war, and it was brutal. One evening, after a dinner laced with tension and silence, Lucas slammed his chair back, frustration flashing in his eyes. "Chloe, what do you want? You have everything people dream of. Why? Do you act like you're a prisoner?" Chloe looked up, her voice steady and low. "I want to be myself. I want to be respected. I'm not some trophy in your collection. And if you think love can be built on control, then you don't know anything about love." Her words struck like a slap, jarring him awake. For the first time, Lucas realized the emptiness of his own life. But instead of changing, he retreated deeper into his defense mechanisms, plotting new ways to regain control, new ways to push Chloe back into the place he had decided for her. Yet in doing so, he began to reveal cracks in his own psyche. Sleepless nights followed, haunted by a question. Why wasn't she afraid? Why did she remain composed, even when everything he did was meant to break her? And then, on a cold night, in a brightly lit but emotionally sterile apartment, Chloe turned to him and spoke gently. "Lucas, you think this is a chess game, and I'm just a pawn. But you never realized I never agreed to play by your rules." Lucas froze. In her eyes was a confidence that couldn't be shaken, and behind it, something he never saw coming. Over the days that followed, Lucas began to feel control slipping through his fingers. He wasn't sure anymore if he was leading this relationship. And for the first time in his life, instead of seeking control, he felt an urge to listen, not to win, but to understand the one woman who moved his heart, not for her looks, not for her title, but for her character and her courage. One night, as the city glittered outside the glass walls of the penthouse, Lucas sat alone on the sofa, overwhelmed by emptiness. He had everything and yet was losing the one thing that truly mattered. A woman who might have loved him, if only he hadn't tried to mold her into someone she never wanted to be. He used to believe he could control everything: plans, people, emotions. Lucas Marshall had always been the man behind the curtain, calculating every move. Chloe was supposed to be just another part of the plan, a carefully arranged marriage, a socially convenient alliance. 6 months, that was the contract. But no one could have predicted what would happen when a supposed pawn awakened something. Real in the heart of the player Dot in the beginning, Chloe played the role of the perfect wife, polite, distant, never too warm, never too cold. She lived in the lavish house as if it were just a stopover. Lucas found himself watching her from afar, wondering why her smile never fully reached her eyes, and why she always seemed to be searching for something that wasn't there. He couldn't understand himself. A man who had ruined lives with a single phone call, now shaken by a woman who made him feel uncertain. Everything began unraveling the day Jack, his last remaining friend, joked, "You've changed. You look like someone who's not in control of his own emotions." Lucas laughed it off, but the words clung to him. That night, he returned home heavy-hearted. In the living room, Chloe sat reading under the soft glow of a lamp. No greeting, no surprise, just quiet distance. "Chloe, we need to talk," he said, his own voice sounding unfamiliar. She set the book down and nodded gently. "I've been waiting for the day you wanted to have a real conversation." Lucas sat across from her. The words he'd prepared felt clumsy. "I don't know where this is going anymore. I thought I had control, but everything's slipping." She was quiet for a long moment. "You once asked me why I agreed to marry you. Maybe now you're finally ready to hear the answer." His hands clenched. "I'm guessing it wasn't for money." Chloe smiled, neither sad nor mocking. "Not for money, not for love. I did it because someone once saved my life, and I owed them something. Marrying you was part of that promise." Lucas felt the ground shift beneath him. "So I'm part of a debt?" "No, you're the part of the story you never understood. And that's the real problem." He stood abruptly, pacing like a man trapped in a room with no doors. "I can't stand not knowing. I've had you followed, investigated, but you're too good at hiding." Chloe walked over, her presence calm and strong. "You think I didn't know? But Lucas, everything you've done was about control. I came here for acceptance." They looked at each other. Silence stretched between them, heavy with something unnamed. "So what do you want me to do now?" Lucas asked, his voice quieter. "Never. Nothing," she replied. "Just be ready when the truth arrives." In the days that followed, Lucas lived in a storm of doubt. Every move Chloe made, opening a window, walking in the rain, answering a call, felt like a puzzle he couldn't solve. He began dreaming of her, not as the woman he married for strategy, but as a mystery that both scared and fascinated him. He could no longer sleep peacefully. The nights in the penthouse were now filled with the howling wind from the balcony, and the silence of a man slowly losing himself. Until one night, after Lucas returned from a long charity gala, she was sitting alone on the balcony, wrapped in dim light and the distant sounds of the city. She didn't turn when she heard his footsteps. She said nothing. Lucas approached her. "Don't shut me out anymore, Chloe." She slowly stood up. Her eyes no longer just carried calm. They now held a storm he had never seen before. "Lucas," she said quietly, deliberately, "the truth isn't always handed to you. Sometimes people have to lose themselves before they're worthy of knowing it." "What are you talking about?" Chloe bent down and pulled out a faded photograph from under the table, placing it gently in his hand. "This is the man who changed my life. He used to believe that only you were strong enough to finish what was left undone." Lucas stared at the photo. A man standing next to a young boy. and next to them, a younger version of himself. His throat tightened. I don't remember. Chloe stepped back, her gaze growing distant. You forgot, but I didn't. And then she walked away for real this time. Lucas stood there, photo in hand, feeling everything he had ever believed crumble around him. No more games, no more victories. Just a man relearning how to breathe, facing a truth from the past he could no longer ignore. So, you really want to know? Chloe asked, her voice cold as ice, though her lips held a bitter smile. She folded her arms, standing like a statue carved from stone in a room thick with unnamed tension. Lucas gave a slight nod, trying to stay calm. He didn't know why the air felt so suffocating, just that his heart was pounding like war drums. He had always believed he was strong enough to face anything until she started speaking. From the very beginning, you never truly saw me. Not because I was hiding, but because you never really cared, Chloe said, her voice firm, unflinching. To you, it was all just strategy. But this time, Lucas, you were the piece being played. Lucas was speechless. His shoulders flinched at her words. Every sentence she spoke peeled away the armor he had, built to convince himself he was in control. Do you remember a company called R&R Logistics? She went on, each word as sharp and cold as winter wind. Probably not. To you, they were. Just numbers on a report. But to me, it was my family's entire world. Lucas took a half step back. Confusion flashed in his eyes. His breath quickened. My father owned that company, Chloe whispered, each word like a dagger to his chest. He was an ordinary man, honest, hardworking, trying to provide for his family. And then you came along, with beautiful deals, vague promises. And in the end, total collapse. The ground beneath Lucas felt like it was giving way. She didn't stop. She didn't let him speak. You didn't just take his job. You took his dignity, his pride, and eventually, his life. My father hanged himself in our garage one night I'll never forget. Her voice cracked, and the first tears began to fall. Lucas said nothing, his heart clenched in pain. He had faced accusations before, but never a tragedy like this. You never remembered him. But I remember every day that followed. I remember my mother scrubbing floors just to pay debts. I remember eating stale bread all winter long. And I swore, Lucas, I swore, you'd one day know exactly how that felt. She stepped closer, her face just inches from his. When I found out about that stupid bet you made, I knew this was it. I didn't come for love or curiosity. I came to show you what it's like to be used, turned into a pawn, manipulated. Lucas tried to speak, but his voice caught in his throat. Chloe cut him off. Don't explain. I don't need your guilt. I don't want you to suffer once. I want you to live with it. Every single day. I don't want revenge. I want you to wake up. And if there's any conscience left in you, you'll never forget that I was the one who made you face yourself. He sank into the dark wooden chair nearby, as if his legs could no longer carry the weight. The air grew heavy and still. Chloe walked out without looking back. In the days that followed, Lucas felt a change he couldn't undo. Chloe's silence. She was still around, still walked the halls, still spoke with staff, but not a single glance or word was directed his way. Breakfasts became endless. She sat across from him, but kept her eyes glued to her phone screen. When he called her name, only the cold breeze from the slightly open window responded. For a man like Lucas, always the center of attention, always in control, her indifference was the cruelest punishment. She didn't yell. She didn't cause scenes. She simply erased him like a useless object. One morning, Lucas gathered all his courage. Chloe, please, say something. Anything. She paused in her step, her back to him, and then walked away without a word. The door clicked shut behind her like a final verdict. He didn't matter anymore. And in that empty apartment, Lucas faced the one thing he thought could never happen: invisibility. The man who once held everything now had only loneliness, silence, and the realization that he was being punished by the very person he thought he could outsmart. Lucas used to think silence meant surrender, but he never understood that for Chloe, silence was the beginning of a storm. She didn't need threats or screaming. Instead, she quietly rebuilt her life, one that no longer included him. At the office, he started noticing things out of sync. Meetings were rescheduled without his knowledge. Crucial documents accidentally never reached him. Projects he had poured his heart into were pushed aside. All of it happened quietly, strategically. He had no proof, but his gut told him the truth. Chloe was the one pulling strings behind the scenes. At home, things were even worse. The kitchen, once a warm place where they shared dinners, now felt cold and distant. Chloe didn't argue. She simply wasn't there. Every time Lucas tried to start a conversation, she dodged him like he was a stranger. Gone were the spontaneous hugs and the soft, caring questions. Every time their eyes met, she responded with a look so neutral, it hurt more than any accusation. One night, Lucas found her in the study, where a soft lamp glow touched her brown hair. She was writing something in a notebook, completely unaware, or perhaps unmoved by his presence. He stepped in carefully, taking a seat across from her. "I know I've made a lot of mistakes," he said, voice low and hoarse. "But I want to change. For you, for us." Chloe didn't stop writing. She gave a small nod, as if he were reading her the weather report. He continued, "I'm not asking for forgiveness right away. Just talk to me, please." She finally looked up. Her eyes were steady, but all warmth was gone. "You think remorse can erase the past?" she asked quietly. Her voice didn't rise, but it struck deeper than a shout. "You shattered my trust like someone smashing a mirror. And now you're offering a few broken pieces and expecting me to smile when I look into them." Lucas lowered his head. He had never felt failure so completely. But he didn't back down. "I'll do anything, no matter how long it takes." Chloe closed her notebook, stood up, and walked past him like he was no more than a shadow. "The thing is," she said at the doorway, without looking back, "it's too late, Lucas. What you broke doesn't exist anymore to fix." The days that followed were a silent punishment. Lucas, once a man in full control, now felt swept into a storm. Chloe didn't need to scream. She simply withdrew, piece by piece. At work, he felt lost among the very team he had built. At home, her silence became the most damning verdict. One rainy evening, he came home after being humiliated in a boardroom meeting, only to find Chloe on the phone laughing. A laugh that didn't include him. She was talking about a business deal, and when he listened closer, he realized it was his old idea, the one he once dreamed of. Now she was running it. "You're running the whole thing, aren't you?" he asked after she hung up. She turned to him with a slight smile. "No, Lucas, I'm just returning what you planted. You're trying to destroy me?" His voice cracked. "Destroy?" Chloe raised an eyebrow, her gaze like ice. "No, I want you to live, to feel every collapse slowly, precisely. You won't fall with a bang. You'll watch yourself unravel, piece by piece, from the inside." From that point on, Lucas was no longer the proud Lucas Marshall. He avoided eye contact. No one waited for his speeches in meetings. No one looked up when he entered the room. Even the old dog, his last faithful friend, stopped following him like before. One night, when everything seemed ready to crumble, Chloe stepped into the living room. Lucas sat there, beneath the soft amber light, his eyes hollow, hands trembling as if trying to hold on to something already lost. Chloe didn't sit. She stood tall physically, and in spirit. "Lucas," she said, her voice barely a whisper, but colder than the night wind. "You once took something from me that can never be returned. So now I give you something equal in wait time, but time lived with guilt." Then she turned and walked away without another word. Lucas didn't stop her. He knew this was the ending he had written for himself long ago, with every careless day he let slip through his hands. Lucas and Chloe, the shattered pieces of hope, no matter how hard he tried. Lucas received only silence from Chloe. Every knock on her heart echoed with distance, not anger, not tears, just a chilling indifference that crept into his soul like fog. He began losing himself in sleepless nights, wondering if anything could still be salvaged. But then, one quiet dawn, as sunlight spilled through the window and fell on an old photo of them together, Lucas understood. Chloe no longer believed in apologies or late tears. If he wanted forgiveness, words would never be enough. He had to rebuild himself from the roots. He started small. No grand gestures, just quiet sincerity. He didn't knock on her door. He didn't flood her inbox. He didn't beg. Instead, he left traces of care. A book she once mentioned, placed neatly on her front step. A familiar cup of coffee, no sugar left, where she'd see it on her morning walk. He learned to observe from afar, like a man relearning the language of someone he used to love with patience. He noticed she still loved white daisies, still walked at dusk, still played classic jazz when her heart was heavy. What once seemed trivial now became his compass. One rainy afternoon, he left a bouquet of daisies at her door note. When Chloe opened the door and saw the rain-speckled flowers, still pure and white, she bent down to pick them up. No smile, no frown, just a quiet look. To Lucas, it meant more than words. He kept going. One morning, she found a brown paper bag with ginger cookies, her Christmas specialty, and a handwritten note. Not to ask for forgiveness, just to say, "I still remember." This time she smiled, just a little. Lucas didn't see it, but the elderly neighbor did, and told him. And to Lucas, it was as if a new world had just opened. One night, the temperature dropped suddenly. Chloe sat curled up on a wooden chair on the balcony, quietly staring out at the peaceful street. Lucas walked over, holding a cup of hot cocoa. He didn't say much, just one simple line. "I just thought, maybe you could use a little warmth." She didn't respond, but she reached out to take the cup. For the first time in weeks, they sat beside each other without feeling the pressure to say anything. The wind brushed past, but the silence between them felt strangely gentle. After a few moments, her voice rose softly. "Lucas, what made you do all of this?" He turned, looking her straight in the eyes. "Because if one day you find it in you to trust again, I want you to remember that I didn't give up. Not because I deserved another chance, but because you deserved a better version of me." Chloe didn't reply right away, but she didn't leave either. She stayed, and that alone was enough for Lucas to know. The seed he had planted hadn't fallen on barren ground. A few weeks later, on a quiet Sunday evening, Chloe walked into the living room just as Lucas was getting ready to head out. He was dressed neatly, preparing for an important meeting with a business partner. "Could you stay home tonight?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Lucas looked at her, surprised. Then, without saying a word, he loosened his tie, pulled out his phone, and canceled the meeting. No questions asked. Her presence in that room, that was the only reason he needed. They sat together on the couch. No more blame, no need for long conversations. Chloe reached for her cup of tea, her eyes thoughtful. "I haven't forgiven you yet," she murmured. "But I see you trying, and maybe I'm ready to start listening." A warmth spread through Lucas's chest. He didn't expect every wound to heal overnight. But if each of his actions could mend just a piece of what was broken, he would. Keep going. That night, not many words were spoken, but something in their eyes had shifted. They were no longer strangers. They were two people who had once loved, learning how to love again, with trust, with respect, and with all the patience the world could offer. Lucas could sense it clearly in every glance, every quiet gesture, that Chloe still hadn't shared the full truth. Though she was beginning to open her heart, something remained locked away, like a box sitting between them, unopened and heavy. He didn't know what it was, but something deep inside told him it was big enough to change everything. The following days passed in a state of fragile in-between, part hope, part quiet anxiety. Lucas remained patient, never pushing, but always present. He put aside major projects, declined meetings, just to spend more time with Chloe, even if it meant simply sitting beside her in silence, or helping her cook a simple dinner in the kitchen. Slowly, little things began to return to their lives. Warm yellow light in the evenings, quiet laughter when Chloe told childhood stories, or those quiet moments watching the rain through the window together. Lucas didn't dare hope too much, but he knew, at the very least, the distance between them was slowly closing. Still, there were moments when Chloe would shrink back whenever he mentioned the future or the past. She would give a half smile or quickly change the subject. It wasn't avoidance. It was fear. And Lucas, having made his share of painful mistakes, understood just how heavy an unspoken pain could be, until one early winter evening, when raindrops traced old memories across the glass panes, Chloe sat quietly in the old wooden chair. The room was dimly lit, just enough to catch the reflection in her eyes as she stared into the distance. Lucas stepped in softly, heart aching at the sight of her expression. It wasn't sadness. It was surrender. And he knew if he didn't speak now, he might lose the chance to ever truly understand her. "Chloe," Lucas began, voice barely audible, "you don't have to carry everything alone. I'm here. And if there's something you've been keeping in, I'm ready to listen. Whatever it is." She didn't look at him right away. Her hands were tightly clasped, her shoulders trembling. A long silence passed, as if time itself had paused. And then finally Chloe looked up. Her eyes shimmered but didn't fall. There was only pain and a quiet determination. "I've stayed silent for too long," she whispered, "because I didn't think I was strong enough to say it. But maybe it's time." Lucas leaned forward, heart clenched. He didn't know what was coming, only that it would change everything between them. "Do you remember that company from high back then?" she continued, her voice calm but lined with sorrow. "The one you and your partner drove into crisis. The one where my father was the CEO." Lucas nodded slowly, his expression darkening. "I once told you that you destroyed my family, and that was true. But it was more than that." Lucas held his breath. "I was pregnant at the time, Lucas." She said it like all the air in the room had been sucked out. The words hit Lucas like a blow. The world around him stood still. "What did you say?" he whispered. "I was pregnant, and I lost the baby because of everything that happened. The job, the disgrace, my family falling apart, and the heartbreak from you. My body just couldn't take it." Her voice cracked. "I didn't have the strength to hold on to my child." Lucas felt like he was sinking into an abyss. He had blamed himself before. He had felt regret. But he had never imagined that his mistake had cost a life. "Chloe." He tried to speak, his voice breaking. "I didn't know. I truly didn't know." "No, because you never cared enough to know?" Chloe said sharply. But it wasn't rage anymore. It was pain long, turned into scar tissue. "You kept chasing ambition and made ruthless choices without once stopping to see who you were hurting." Lucas stepped forward, wanting to reach her, but he stopped. He knew no apology in the world could ever be enough. You have every right to hate me. You don't have to forgive me ever. But if there's anything I can do, anything at all. His voice cracked, almost desperate. I'm only asking, give me a chance to make things right, even if it's just a little. She looked at him for a long moment. In her eyes wasn't just anger or pain anymore. There was something deeper, a quiet battle between memory and the present. Chloe closed her eyes and took a deep breath, as if trying to gather every last piece of strength left in her heart. I'm not promising anything, Lucas, she said finally, her voice softer now. But at least now you know the truth. And in that moment, though the past couldn't be undone, something between them shifted, like a door cracked open just enough for a sliver of light to come through. Is it even possible to start over? Elena's voice broke the silence of the fading sunset. She stood leaning on the weathered wooden railing, her eyes fixed on the sky, slowly turning pale. I'm not sure I can forgive you, Adrian. The wounds run too deep, and I'm not the woman I used to be. Adrian didn't respond right away. He walked slowly toward her, keeping a respectful distance close enough to show he wasn't running, but far enough that she'd still feel safe. I understand, he said. I'm not hoping for a miracle. I just want a chance to prove myself, to show you, not with words, but with actions. Elena turned to face him. Her expression held no more bitterness, only the quiet fatigue of someone who had once loved deeply and been hurt even deeper. It's not that I don't want to believe you, she said. It's just, I did once, and you threw that trust off a cliff. Adrian lowered his head. I know, and I won't make excuses. But I'm going to spend every day trying to make up for that. Not just for you, but for myself, The man I lost along the way. A silence fell between them, not a wall, but an empty space waiting to be filled. Elena said nothing, but as she walked back into the house, she left the door open behind her, and Adrian understood that was the first sign. Not forgiveness, but an opening dot in the days that followed. Adrian all but disappeared from his glossy, high-powered world. He declined invitations to conferences, canceled meaningless meetings, and began doing something he had never truly done before, facing the damage he'd caused. He went back to the places where his company once planted its flag, and where it had quietly crushed hundreds of small dreams. He knocked on aging doors of old storefronts, where once thriving small business owners had lost everything because of his ruthless strategies. One afternoon, he stopped in front of a bakery that had been closed for nearly 3 years. The owner, Mr. Benito, an elderly man with flower-worn hands and eyes heavy with sadness, opened the door with suspicion. I'm Adrian Valdez, Adrian introduced himself. I came to say I'm sorry. Not to ask for forgiveness, but to begin fixing what I broke. Mr. Benito looked at him as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Can an apology bring bread back to the oven? Adrian gave a sad, quiet smile. No, but maybe it can help build a new one. And he meant it. The following week, Adrian no longer wore tailored suits. He became a man rebuilding the ruins of his own past. He helped raise funds for small businesses, created support programs for those bankrupted by his decisions, and spent his days listening, really listening to the stories he once ignored. Elena watched from a distance. Each action Adrian took was noted not through the eyes of a former lover, but through the gaze of someone who had once lost everything to betrayal. And slowly, piece by piece, the cracks in her heart began to mend. From promises, but from proof. One rainy night, Elena stood at her window, watching raindrops streak down the glass. She heard a familiar car pull up outside. Adrian stepped out, his shirt soaked at the shoulders, carrying a damp cardboard box filled with applications for reopening bakeries. Small shops, scholarship proposals. I don't know if I'll ever get it all right, he said as she opened the door. But I'm not giving up. Elena was silent. Then, after a moment, she reached out not to hold him, but to help carry the heavy box inside that the terms of their trial marriage neared. Its end, Adrian planned a quiet dinner under the bougainvillea vines in the backyard. No candles, no music. Just the two of them and the wind. Elena, he said, his voice calm but certain. I know the 6 months are almost over, but I don't want this to end. I'm not the same man who signed that contract. And you're not the same wounded woman I hurt. We can begin again from choice, not obligation. Elena didn't reply right away. She held her glass of orange juice, watching the condensation bead and slide down like time itself. Then, this time, let's not bet on anything, she said with a gentle smile. Let's just live. No more games. Adrian nodded, his throat tightening. Only love, Elena. Honest, real love. Chloe stood still as Lucas spoke. His eyes held no hesitation, no deception. Each word he said was soaked in a truth she hadn't dared hope for. The walls she had built around her heart began to crack. What started as conflict between them had grown into something neither expected, a love forged in honesty and bravery. Lucas ... I don't even know when I started feeling this way, Chloe whispered, eyes fixed on him. But I want to try. Not because of the past, but because of what we can build together as equals. And in that moment, time seemed to pause. No more pain. No more doubt. Just two people once broken, now choosing to heal together. As time went on, Chloe began to notice subtle changes in her body. The waves of morning nausea, the strange fatigue. A visit to the doctor left her stunned. She was carrying a tiny life inside her. Lucas could hardly believe his ears when he heard the news. He let out a soft laugh and pulled Chloe tightly into his arms, his voice trembling. We're starting a whole new chapter, he whispered. One with no lies, no schemes, just love and a real family. Lucas knew he couldn't undo the mistakes of the past, but he could make amends through his actions. I want to get it right this time, he said, his voice steady. I want to marry you not for any other reason, but because I truly love you. I feel the same. Chloe smiled through tears. I want to get married for love, for trust, and for our child. Their second wedding wasn't grand like the first. No lavish gown, no media coverage, no contracts, and no whispers behind their backs. Just a peaceful afternoon surrounded by a few loved ones, where they stood before each other and made vows no longer chained to the past. After the ceremony, they danced beneath soft lights. Chloe rested her head on Lucas's shoulder, and the quiet music played like the heartbeat of two people who had once been broken, now beating in unison again. Who would have thought all this started with a bet? She whispered, half teasing, half emotional. Lucas held her tighter and nodded. The only bet I ever won was falling in love with you. To Chloe, that moment proved that sometimes miracles aren't born from perfection, but from hearts willing to change, to rise after falling. And in Lucas's arms, she no longer had doubts. They were ready to write the next chapter, built on honest, unwavering love. What do you think of their journey? Should Chloe have forgiven him? Did Lucas deserve a second chance? Leave a comment. We'd love to hear your thoughts and your own story. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe for more journeys of healing and love. Thank you for being with us.